Hello and welcome to Studio RC, an encouragement for both your recovery and your faith. My name is Max. I am an alcoholic and I am also a follower of Jesus. So this week we're starting on a new adventure, and each week we're going to take a look at a different recovery church value. And we're going to do so, I'm going to try something I haven't tried. I'm going to put a little timer in the corner and I'm going to give myself 12 minutes to see what I can do on each value. I'll only have the 12 minutes and we'll go through each of the different values. What I wanted to do is just set it up, and this will be the same setup each week, and then we'll transition into whatever value of the week. But it's important to remember, who are we and what do we do here at Recovery Church? Recovery Church Movement is a network of recovery churches reaching and training those in early recovery to grow in their faith and their recovery. Recovery Church Movement is a bridge between the 12-step fellowships and the church. We train, coach, and help people learn to become disciple makers within the recovery community and to start, plant, and reproduce recovery churches. That's who Recovery Church is. That's what we do. Now, our vision, our Recovery Church vision is this: a recovery church in every city in this nation and beyond. And we have taken a look, I think there's something like 15,000 cities in our nation, and so we're looking at that and looking at ways that we can continue to expand and continue to have recovery churches in each and every one of those locations, in addition to your online resources such as Studio RC or our RC online campus, our High Five at 420. So we have all these different stories, different ways that we can help those, both the physical locations as well as giving digital resources as well. And so our mission, we've did our vision and our mission. Our mission is equipping God's people to do God's work of recovery. So we have who we are and what we do, we have our vision, and we have our mission. And that will set us up each week to go into exploring a different value. And we'll review this each week, and then we'll go into the value of the week. And so over the next several weeks, we're going to look at various values. And again, I'm going to take 12 minutes on a clock and see how far and how much we can get covered. I may have to speed talk, but that's okay. So hopefully you're ready, and this will be something that'll be informative also of who, again, Recovery Church is, and who the very essence of us and our values and the things that we do value. So let's get started on this week's value. In this episode, we are going to tackle our 11th value. We're almost toward the end here. We've got just a couple more. And today we're going to look at the value of discipleship and sponsorship and how closely aligned they are. And I think this is one of the pictures of both really recovery and church really coming together. So let's put those 12 minutes on the board and let's get going. All right, so let me read to you the short form of this value, the Recovery Church value of discipleship and sponsorship. The more we give faith and recovery away, the more we receive. We cannot do this alone because we recover together. We see both sponsorship and discipleship as essential to our lives. Let me read that again. The more we give faith and recovery away, the more we receive. We cannot do this alone because we recover together. We see both sponsorship and discipleship as essential to our lives. This value shows how important our are doing both discipleship and sponsorship, and how they're very complementary of one another and sometimes look very similar to one another. Now, there is a long form of this value, and I want to read the long form. It adds a little, depth to what we're talking about. And so I'm going to read the longer form of this value, because I think it starts to show a picture of exactly what we're talking about. So this is how the longer form of the value goes. We cannot do this alone. We recover together. We see sponsorship as a great opportunity for discipleship. We encourage all Recovery Church family members to have a sponsor, and when ready, to sponsor others and teach those that they are sponsoring to do the same. That's how we do this. We just keep letting it go on from one person to the next to the next. And the value continues on. As Christians, we are commanded to go and make disciples and teach them to obey the commandments of Christ. Completing the Great Commission will require the mobilization of every fully devoted disciple. Whew. Okay, so that added a little to the form of the short form of the value, but the long form, I think, again, starts to paint a picture. I love how it says we see sponsorship as a great opportunity for discipleship. Sponsorship and discipleship are very similar. One of the things that I have said in the past, and will say again, I don't think that there's a more intense form of discipleship than the 12 steps. Not a whole lot of people who are not seeking recovery would probably be willing to do the 12 steps, like a personal inventory or the amends list or a fear list. And the very much sponsorship can be a great opportunity for discipleship. Now, let's just define discipleship, because maybe that's a new term, or you're not. What are we talking about? Discipleship. Discipleship is teaching biblical concepts while modeling and guiding others toward living righteously as followers of Jesus Christ. Okay, so that's the textbook definition. Discipleship is teaching like biblical lessons, biblical concepts, and while the person who's teaching it is modeling it, and ideally the person who is learning it is trying to model the behaviors, and both are guiding others toward this living on this higher plane, this more righteous plane, because they are followers of Jesus. That's what discipleship is. And that's what Jesus did with his 12 disciples. He discipled them. He taught them. He showed them. And that's exactly, as people of faith, what we're called to do. And similarly, in the program, when someone sponsors someone, they lead them, they teach them through the steps by modeling and guiding. So I think that there's a lot of carryover. One of the things that the long form talked about is completing the Great Commission will require the mobilization of every fully devoted disciple. So if you're learning biblical concepts and you're trying to live them out, you are a disciple of Jesus, you are following the teachings of Jesus, there's this thing called the Great Commission, and it was dubbed that. It's from Matthew 28. And let me read this. And this is sort of, discipleship is what we're doing. The Great Commission is why we're doing it, why we disciple or sponsor others, why we carry the message. So the Great Commission says, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And again, these are Jesus' words. And surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. So Jesus says, therefore, go and make disciples. And actually, in the Greek, it says, while going. So it's not like get up and go. It's while you're going. While you're living, make disciples of all nations. Like the people you come in contact with, you baptize them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. In other words, the Trinity and the understanding of faith that we have. and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded. And surely I'm with you till the very end of the age. So like, I appreciate Jesus is like, I'm not leaving you to be alone. You're going to be like, I'm going to be with you and I'm going to teach you. And the Great Commission's important. It's important because the glory of God's important. The glory of God is paramount. All other things pale in comparison. And so we want to share the message of the good news, that you can be saved, that you can be forgiven, that you are loved by God. All of these incredible concepts. It shows us how, a little earlier in Matthew, Jesus, it says, went on from there. He saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. And so Jesus he discipled others by saying, follow me, go with me, and I'm going to teach you along the way, and watch what I am doing. That's what discipleship and sponsorship is all about. When I have sponsees, one of the things I tell them, I said, chase me. Somewhat jokingly, but not really, because the longer you stay sober and clean, the more responsibilities you often have and the things that you have to, the opportunities that you get. And so the longer you stay sober, a lot of times the busier you are. So I tell, if you want what I have, chase me. I'll give you everything, but just keep up with me. Follow me. Show me, follow me as Jesus said, but follow what I'm doing and how I'm trying to live a sober life, a faith-filled life. It tells us in the steps we came to believe. And old AA would say, we came to, and we came to believe. We first showed up, and then we came to, we kind of got our bearings, and then we came to believe. We want to be gentle with people as they're learning to believe, as they're figuring it out, as they're understanding what it means to believe. And we want to work at their pace. Now, we've been talking about the discipleship element, but let me tell you about the 12th step. And the 12th step very much mirrors what the discipleship component is. And this is, the 12th step says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result, AA says the, NA says A, but the result of these steps. In other words, a significant result of the steps is going to be a spiritual awakening. We tried to carry this message to alcoholics and addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So that's what the 12th step says, which very much mirrors what discipleship is all about. The first part of the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening, the terms, whether it's spiritual experience or spiritual awakening, are used many times in the big book. And it says, upon careful reading, it shows that what a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening, or it even says being reborn in the big book. It says a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself. And it has done so in many different forms. But when we have a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, we have this personality change, a change from a power that's greater than ourselves, that's outside of ourselves, comes in, and it changes our personality sufficient enough to overcome our alcoholism. Some in the faith community would call that being born again. In the recovery circles, it's called spiritual awakening or a spiritual experience. But there's, either way, there's this God consciousness to recognizing God's power and strength in our lives. The 12th step goes on to say, as a result of these steps, this is how we arrived at a spiritual awakening. And I would say, if you followed the 12 steps or this model of discipleship, this model of learning, it brings you to the spiritual awakening. You've admitted powerlessness. You've recognized a power greater than yourself. You've done an inventory of who you are. You've told God another person in yourself so you understand. You've asked God to remove any shortcomings that get in the way of your usefulness. You've gone through the list of amends. You've made amends. And then you've continued that process in 10 and 11. And by the time you get to 12, you've had this personality change because you've gone through all these things and you've allowed God to work in you and through you. You've gotten rid of the guilt. You've gotten rid of the shame. All of these things have occurred to allow you to have this personality change. And this personality change happens through the steps. And it tells us we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and addicts. In other words, the spiritual awakening because of the 12 steps. And one of the great things is we tried. We did our best. The results are up to God, but we tried to carry this message. And in the original manuscript of how it works, it says, we carried this message to others, including alcoholics. Know that you have a message to carry to others. Not just addicts and alcoholics, especially to addicts and alcoholics, but you have a message to carry, a message of recovery, a message of faith to carry to others. That gets more into almost evangelizing and sharing the gospel, sharing your testimony of how God has worked in and through you. And then we practice these principles in all our affairs. In other words, as we've had this personality change, as we've been taught these different things, we've done everything we can so that we can practice and have this godly life. We want to be an example. One of the things I find very interesting is if you go to an in-person meeting, especially a newcomer who doesn't have a sponsor, if you watch the people around you, you will be drawn to the people who carry themselves differently, who they just seem to, there's something different about them. And more times than not, I'm going to venture to say they've had a spiritual awakening and you're drawn to that. And those are the type of people that can and will walk you through the process of the 12 steps. Discipleships and 12 steps, they are very similar in nature. Sometimes if you have somebody who doesn't have the faith component, the 12 steps could miss out on the teachings of Jesus. But when you find somebody who is a person of faith that leads you through the 12 steps, it is a beautiful, complementary marriage made in heaven. And it will open incredible worlds to you. I encourage you as our time has run out to have someone who leads you, who teaches you so that you can then teach others. The only way to keep it, is to give it away. And we do that through sharing it with others. It tells us in the big book on page 89, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics or with other addicts. And Bill W. was very unsuccessful initially he was sharing his experience, strength, and hope, and no one was getting sober, but he was staying sober. And the same goes not only in regards to our recovery, but we share our faith with others. I just encourage you, have that spiritual mentor, that discipler, that sponsor that will guide you through the process, especially early on. It's a very critical role to teach you and to show you and to guide you. And so if you're not sure, if you're at a campus for Recovery Church, talk to your lead. Talk to people on the leadership team that maybe they can help lead you and sponsor or disciple you, or they can point you in the right direction. Just know that you're never alone in this process. The steps all say we. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives have become a man. Not I, it says we. You are not alone. And discipleship and sponsorship is one of the greatest ways we keep the we in both our recovery as well as our faith. Well, hopefully that encouraged you today. That was just a quick glimpse of sponsorship and discipleship. Again, a vast topic that we could spend a lot more time on. But I thank you for listening, and hopefully that this encouraged you enough to share this video with somebody else, or make sure you like it, make a comment, subscribe, so that we can get the word out of how others can also feel this inclusion of the we as they are learning the various lessons of faith and recovery. So glad that you joined us on Studio RC, and just remember, Recovery Church, there's 12 steps. and one goal. God bless, and we'll see you next time.